Hi. Okay, so I'm really excited today to introduce Will Terry. Will Terry is my favorite illustrator of all time. Seriously, I can recognize your art anywhere I see it. I know exactly whose it is because I have grown up as an artist watching you draw, and
Oh,
it's been
wow.
really exciting. And so when you started teaching others to do art, it was a huge blessing to me and my art career. So I just want to introduce you. I'm going to let you introduce your background and your where you started doing art, how long you've been doing art, and maybe if you could tell me where you started, where you went to school, what gave you a passion about art, that would be fantastic.
Okay. How far back do we want to go?
As far back as you want to.
Oh man, well, if you've been following me for a while, you probably know all these answers.
I know a few.
um yeah, I drew since I was in elementary school and always wanted to draw up through junior high and high school, and I was never the best in my class. I was never the worst. Um when I went to college, I did horribly academically in high school. So the only way I could get into university, BYU was my choice, was to go in the summer semester. And so my parents were like, "Well, you're good at art, so you should take art classes along mixed in with the academic classes." So that was the strategy that we used to get me through. So I'd get A's in the art classes and C's and an occasional D in the math and science and English and stuff. And it's funny because I like to read, um, and I just hated reading what they told me to read in school. So I did poorly. And what's funny is I went back because I thought I was going to graduate, so I never got a degree.
Okay.
But I started teaching at UVU later on. I taught at BYU later on, and then at UVU in Utah. And they said, well, since you're teaching here, you can take some free classes. So I was like, I wonder if I could actually get an A in an academic class. So I took an art history class, which is, it's all writing. And I was on track to get an A when I got two big book projects, illustration, children's book projects to work on to illustrate. And I didn't have time to get the A, but I was on track to get an A when those jobs hit. And I had to do I had to triage the final exam, and I could not spend the right amount of time. So,
Hmm.
and anyway, I figured out how to get a C, a high C, which would give me a B plus in the class. So,
So you passed.
so I got a B plus. Yeah, I could have gotten an A if I had had the time to study for the slides, but I just didn't have time to put that time into memorization.
And
So
this
yeah, I
is
know I don't know if I jumped too far ahead there, but basically, yeah, I started, I went to an illustration program and ended up being towards the end. I ended up being in the top, definitely in the top half of my class. And then I didn't, unlike some people had plan Bs after school, and they're like, well, I'm going to go work doing this, doing that. I didn't have a plan B. So I just decided, well, what do you do? What does a freelance illustrator do to get work? They advertise their art and try to get freelance gigs. And so that's what I did. And luckily at that time, um, there was a thriving editorial illustration market. So I started there, and I ended up in the next like 5 to 7 years, probably doing 1,000 magazine and newspaper articles, illustrating them. And that's really where I learned a lot of how to be an illustrator. Just my work was so bad compared to my students today. My drawing ability was so bad.
when you were doing freelance or when you were
Yeah,
in school?
even then,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there was I had a style that was really primitive back then, to where you had this look of undrawing, you know,
Oh.
and it was I thought it was masking my lack of ability to draw,
Hmm.
but anyone who could draw could tell that I couldn't draw. It's just that the art directors that were hiring the people that could draw, that were undrawing in that style, the Brad Holland types, the Dave Cutlers, the those guys, uh, they could do it well, and I couldn't. And
Hmm.
I didn't love doing it. I actually found that my passion, my love, was in children's books.
So
So,
a lot of our listeners wish to make a full-time living as an artist, and clearly you have. Now you mentioned that some of them had
mhm,
a plan B, but you didn't, right?
right.
What would you say to someone um, just wanting to not have a plan B, that this is what they want to do? What would you
You know,
say?
I have heard a lot of people talk about this, and a lot of people every a lot of people say that if you're really serious about doing something, don't have a plan B because you'll take it.
Hmm.
So that's one side of the coin, right? If you have a plan B, you're already in the mindset of bailing on the main thing.
Hmm.
Because I didn't ever think that there was anything else in the back of my mind, I always knew there was failure, and I thought I would fail. So I thought I would end up being working in the trades, doing drywall or carpentry, or, and not to say that that's failing, you know, that if you're working in those fields, you're a failure. What I mean by that is I would have failed at my goal of being an illustrator.
Okay.
And I knew that I didn't have a passion for doing that kind of work either. I had already done that right out of high school. I was a carpenter's helper and I hated it. So I didn't want to go there, you know, but I was like, well, I won't go homeless. I'll end up doing that. But I think that there's I've polled so many different illustrators, and you know, talking with my partners at SVS, Jake and Lee, on, you know, their experience with other illustrators that have made it, and the paths are always different. You know, this successful illustrator went to school, that one didn't. This one went into illustration straight into children's books, this one came in through editorial, that one came in through advertising, that one came in through being an art director first. There's many paths that lead to, you know, is your focus on publishing mostly for your blog?
No, it's actually all. So it's this, I'm hoping to draw people in to know how to start, you know, where to go, that you can, but you do need to hone your skills. You need to become the best that you
Mhm.
can be to get there. So yeah, a little bit of
To
everything.
apply it.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
How to, that's a very good word. How to apply, you know, your learning, how to
Yeah.
learn and how to apply it. So,
Yeah. So I didn't have a plan B. I think a lot of the successful people I know didn't either. Um, there are times where there are, you know, people get sidetracked and can come back at it later. My one of my messages for people is, if you love creating art, you know, if you absolutely love the process and you can't, you know, you for me, I mean, I only have my experience, right? I get to a point where if I have an idea for a project, and it's just this idea that's gnawing at me, eventually I have to do it.
mhm.
You know, I have to. There's no, it's, and I'm not doing it just for the money, you know. I It's just inside me. It has to come out. And I think that we see that manifestation when we see how creative people are, even behind bars, you know.
Yeah,
Even criminals are, they do amazing tattoos in prison, and they're not even allowed to tattoo. You know, it's the creativity, it has to come out of us if you're an
yes,
artist and you love to create. So so I would say, instead of defining yourself as a success or a failure based on Are you making money with your art? Define your success by how fulfilled you are by making art. And I know that that's probably not fulfilling to a lot of people, because a lot of people, we have this, our eyes set on, if I could only do, make money with my art. Well, I, early on, all I wanted was to be able to support my family. And I was like, if I could make, $20,000 to $30,000 a year making art, and I didn't even care what kind it was, I'll be happy. Well, I attained that goal. And soon I wasn't very happy with the art that I was making. You know what I mean? And I didn't wake up in the morning going, this is amazing, I get to be an artist. After a while, I'm looking at, well, I don't really like making this editorial art. What do I really want to do? Oh, children's book stuff. Okay. Well, I got my first children's books, and I'm like, well, now I'm happy now. Until the kind of children's books I was getting weren't the ones that I wanted to do, And then finally I started getting assignments, children's books that I really wanted to work on. And then it was like, well, now I'm really happy, because now I'm working with an editor that gets me, and an art director that understands me, and I'm going to keep doing books for these guys. And then I found making my own projects, starting SVS, and start self-publishing some of my own books that I didn't feel would ever be suitable for traditional publishing. And I'm working on a book like that right now that I haven't announced to anybody. I'm about a third of the way through, and it's the funnest project I've ever worked on.
Well, that's fantastic.
So it's, what's that? Yeah. So it's, I think that's, for me, I can't really imagine, and maybe there will be another projects after this, but it's the ones that I can, where I can do exactly what I want, and I don't have anyone telling me no.
Yeah.
And I have to seek out people to tell me yes. So I have to bounce it off of other people and say, what do you think of this idea? The project that I'm working on right now is something that is in a genre that I've never heard of before. It's a new creation book that I've done searches on Amazon, and I can't find anybody who's done anything like this. It's very different. And if I approached my publisher, one of two things would happen. They'd either love it and not know what to do with it, and possibly mess it up, is what I'm worried about, right? Or they would hate it and they would just say no, which would be fine. And I might take it to market because I plan to kickstart it. And if I kickstart it, it might flop. But that's way more exciting than the alternative of either not trying at all, or of, in this sense, giving it to a publisher that might mess it up and change it into something that it wasn't intended to be. So anyway.
That's fantastic. It sounds like your art has grown with you. And as you have grown as an artist, you've honed into what you're meant to do. And I think that's wonderful for all artists to know and do, whether it's writing or drawing or illustrating.
Yeah.
So I do want to talk about Society of Visual Storytellers, because that has been such an impact. So believe it or not, when you did YouTube, I would follow your YouTubes. And what I found most inspiring is it wasn't just like here's how you draw, right? You would talk to the artist, you would talk to the soul of the artist about becoming as best as they can. And now you've created society with a group of people, Society of Visual Storytellers. And it was right about that time that I was going to try to reach out to you and say, how do I draw like you do, that this school started, really, for reals. And so I was so excited about that I have been a member of SVS Learn long since I stopped taking classes, just because I want to support it, because it is such an amazing classes, amazing art, just for artists to learn. And I think it's fantastic. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about SVS Learn, because I want as many people to know about it as possible. I have plugged it more times than you can imagine in my life.
Well, thank you. we certainly love that. Um, yeah, so I was teaching at UVU, and you know, I love to teach, and I always have, and I love trying to break down concepts, and like try to figure out like why certain things work and why certain things don't in making art, and common things that I see in other people's work that are appealing to me. And everybody has these different things that appeal to them, but um I long story short, I had actually started another site. Did you ever know about Folio Academy?
No, no.
That one? Okay, so that was the predecessor to SBS Learn.
Okay.
um but don't go there.
Okay.
It's, well, everything is really old. It probably should be dismantled. But anyway, I learned a lot of things and had a different partner with that, and learned a lot of things there, and that gave genesis to working with Jake and Lee on SBS Learn. But yeah, our goal really is to give the best possible art education to children's book illustrators and people wanting to do graphic novels and
Mhm.
comics and things like that, at a fraction of the cost of a traditional university art school or just a regular art school. And technology is going this way.
Yeah.
It's allowing, you one of the things that always bugged me when I went to school was everyone tells you the teachers to avoid, right? So you have to, you have to take these certain classes. You have to take drawing 1, 2, 3. You have to take color theory. Well, who do you recommend for figure drawing? Oh, take Johnson. Don't take Brown. Why not? Oh, Brown doesn't know what he or she's doing.
Hmm.
And so they're just kind of filling in, but you really want to take from this really good person over here. Well, what about the students who paid the same amount of money and got stuck with the other? I mean, one class is going to fill up first, and then the other one is all the leftovers go there, and
Right.
so they get a lesser education.
Hmm.
And that was one of the things that I did not like about that was just one of the things. I could list off a lot of things I didn't like about the university system. But when I found out that you could upload videos, it's like, so you could work harder on a lecture than you do for when you show up at school and just wing it, which most teachers do. And you could use visuals, and you can use video and record and really present a good lesson that people can watch over and over again. It doesn't evaporate when it's given. There's gems that are given in university art programs and art schools, but as soon as they're done, that's it. You can't go back and rewatch it. It happened in class. There's amazing demos that happen,
Yeah.
and things like that. So technology is allowing us to deliver, in video form, instruction that can be watched over and over again, which allows us to make the cost really low. We're not accredited. We don't have to go through, any of that stuff, which puts a premium on the education. So we're practical, and in the real world, no publisher will ever ask an artist for their degree.
Yeah.
So it's really, the only reason to get a degree in art is so that you could teach art, which
Hmm.
is a good reason to get a degree. If you really want to be a teacher at a university art program, or at a private college, you need that degree, but you don't need it for working in publishing. And so because of that, we said, let's just keep the cost really low and do the best we can and hire the best teachers around the world. And so that's what we've tried to do. And so far, so good. We
It's
have a lot of
amazing.
people, a lot of people that swear by it, and that have used it, and that are getting, they show us the books they're working on with publishers after having taken our classes and stuff. So it's very rewarding.
I think it's wonderful. You can spend more on coffee than it costs to take SBS Learn. And I have grown exponentially as an artist, just exponentially. I could look at something and draw it now, whereas I could not fathom doing something like that before. So it really is great. And I
That's
know that
great.
it's really heavy on children's books, but would you say that it's applicable to other art mediums as well? You mentioned graphic novels as well and other things.
Yeah, yeah, the principles are the same. I mean, our most of our people are children's book people, but we do have a lot of people that are also working on comics and graphic novels. And we have a, I think we have a couple of comics classes, and we have a couple of graphic novel classes, and we hope to be able to do more with our more. Did you ever take Children's Book Pro?
No, no.
You haven't done that one, so it's a premium, and but it's really like the finisher for people who are really serious of getting into children's books. And so we hope to do Comic Book Pro, and that's probably going to also include graphic novel people.
Mhm.
And then we have another class we're getting ready to work on there. I think it's going to be called How to Fix Your Art, and it's really going to be a video tool based on really helping people self-critique their work and break it down
Nice.
systematically,
We can
you
all
know.
use that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So we'll be working on that this summer, I think. So yeah.
Well, I thank you for SVS Learn, and I hope some of our audience goes out and checks it out because it's really amazing. And for such a low cost to get so much value and so much worth, it's, and again, I take the courses over and over. In fact, you have a contest, you have several contests, and one of them is draw 50 things. And I
Uh-huh.
haven't done that contest yet because one of the first class I took was the one where you had all these cubes and orbs and you drew all these different textures and colors together. And at the
Uh-huh.
time, I could not, that was way to higher level than I could draw, right?
Uh-huh.
And so every year I retake that course. And when I am ready, I'm going to draw 50 things for you, and they're going to
Oh,
be
cool.
tossing those orbs around the sky. That's my plan. And I'm not there yet, but I'm going to get there. So, but that's the plan.
Well,
So,
cool.
so let me ask you something.
Uh-huh.
Um, so for those artists that are looking to go out there, keep in mind that this is from, young kids in middle school all the way through, my age. I'm in my 40s, right?
Mhm.
That want to do stuff. What do you think when they first start out as artists? What are some pitfalls that you would say, hey, I've got, almost 30 years of this. These are things you want to look out for. What would those be?
Okay, so one of them would be the kids who only want to draw manga
Ah,
in the manga style, right?
yeah.
So they're just, you have to realize, and any kid that's watching this that's hearing me is going to go, oh, that old guy doesn't know what he's talking about, right? And maybe you're right, but I will say this, that what we do in school is we advise our students. We say the only way that you're going to become really successful, if you're looking for financial success as an artist, is to be original and to develop your own style and your own creativity. And manga is a style that's already established. So if you're drawing in that style, then your work is already looking like everyone else, and you're easily replaceable. And the goal should be for you to become irreplaceable, right? So the last thing you want to do is make yourself, you basically camouflage yourself with someone else's style, right? It's
Yes.
cool to do, and if you have fun doing it, do it. But in addition to drawing that way, try to develop your own characters, try to develop your own style, see what comes out, because everybody has a style. It's like a fingerprint.
Mhm.
Everybody has their own style waiting to get out. And if you only draw on someone else's style, you'll never discover what you're capable of. The world is always looking for something new and fresh. And yeah, so that would be one thing. Another thing that I see kids doing is, well, in general, and it depends on what age is listening to this, but if you're if you're in high school and you're going to college, just know that most college portfolios, most high school portfolios, that people are they're not they're not drawing enough narrative story art. They just almost they're never. And I guess I'm probably speaking more to college age. It's like this object, that object, this character. It's like, it's I think Instagram has kind of messed us up because you've got this little square, and the images that do the best on Instagram are like usually like one character because you're on your phone and you really can't see a more complex image. Plus, a more complex image takes forever
Yeah.
to do compared to one character. So most artists on Instagram that are doing illustration, it's like you look at their Instagram, it's all just characters with
Yeah.
no story. And so that actually in some ways is good if you're really serious about breaking into the business, because while the masses are just doing one character, if a client's looking for character designers, they can find them anywhere because that's all people are posting. So if you're doing narrative illustration, telling stories, where we can tell what's going on by looking at the characters interacting with each other, and we can see what the visual story is. That's what publishers are looking for. They're looking for people who can, one, carry a character so the character can look the same
Yeah.
sequentially, in the sequential art. That's another thing that I would suggest
Mhm.
people do that they don't do enough in their graduating
Right.
portfolios.
From every angle,
Yeah.
every perspective, that is very challenging.
And we cover that in our
Mhm.
um, children's book class and children's book pro. Um, and keeping a likeness in characters is if you say, "Well, I can't do that," because a lot of people, I could never do that for the longest time. Couldn't do it. My first children's book, I had a main character. She looked different in every picture.
Yeah.
And my art director, it was a very small press, and they were like, so yeah, the character isn't looking, and I knew it, I'm like,
You have to
they're
go
telling
back and
me
draw it again.
I'm trying and I couldn't do it. And so they hired another artist to help me,
Okay.
you know, and it was
So you
embarrassing.
had to learn.
Yeah. And it's really simple. It's really about measurements. There's no secret. Like, well, some people just have that ability and others don't. The ones that, if anybody makes you feel like, well, it's a secret ability that I have, it's just in me, they're full of it.
Mm.
Because it's really,
I like that. It's so true.
yeah, I mean, it's basically just following um, the rules of perspective, and then also measurements, like distance between eyes, shape of eyes, size of eyes, size of nose, distance from nose to mouth, size of mouth, size of face, chin, all the proportions from the top of the head to the chin. And, that's something that you can easily practice and get good at. It's all shapes. It's just rotating shapes in air.
I'm gonna have to check out Children's Book Pro. It sounds really interesting. I actually, we have a few minutes left. So if you had three little tidbits really quick that every artist, you would say to every artist out there, what would they be?
Like in order to improve,
Um,
or
yes. Yeah, let's go with that because I think that every artist needs to do that no matter what level you're at. So
yeah.
what would those tidbits?
So one thing I'll just take straight from Stephen King, because it applies in the visual arts too. When he's asked this question, he just says "but time," you
Mm,
know. And really what it is it's, if you need pencil mileage, you just need, he's saying you just write from morning till night. You just write, right?
yeah.
If you write all the time, you'll get better. If you're constantly drawing, you'll get better.
Mm.
And so that's the first thing. I had a lot of students that really didn't enjoy drawing and they didn't improve. They were hardly ever drawing. And it's weird that they would take
Art class.
art as a major in college and not like to draw. So that's probably the first one. The second one is be teachable. Just know that art is different than any other subject in school. It's not treated when you take art in school? Do we have enough time? Are we
Yep, we're
doing
good.
okay?
We have a few minutes. Yeah.
Okay. And so what happens is in English class, you get your paper back, it's marked up.
Mhm.
In math, you get your paper back, it's marked up. In art, you're patted on the head and said, good job.
Yeah.
Okay, well, your art isn't good. It's not great, right? It's disposable, just like those English tests and math tests. And we are from an early age taught that everything we draw or paint is somehow we're spinning gold. It's not gold, it's trash. You can keep the good ones and keep an archive for showing your kids later on, because it's valuable for that. You will hate the work that you did a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years
Yeah.
ago. Every few years, you're going to look back. If you're doing it right, if you're working hard, every year or two, you're going to look back and see work that you're not that proud of anymore. And it
Yeah.
will never stop happening. It should never stop happening. So what you're doing right now is not great. And it won't be great without good instruction. Most people can't do it without by being self-taught. There are people that can, and usually those people are really humble, and they reach out to artists and ask questions, and they kind of get their education anyway, but they get it on their own.
Yeah.
They get it by hanging out with good artists and visiting and talking to them stuff.
Watching
So
somebody on YouTube.
yeah, something like that. So trying to stay as humble as possible, even when you're good. I was 10 years an illustrator and I thought knew what I was doing. And then one day I realized I really can't draw. I really have masked the fact that I never really learned to draw the right way. I mean, I never learned to build volume with shapes and center lines and, and building up from simple shapes. So I could draw a truck, but I have to look at a truck. I couldn't build it from making a simple rectangle and cutting that rectangle through the middle to get the bed of the truck. And like right now, I can, in any position, I can rotate a truck and draw a truck in any angle. And it's just because I've learned how to draw, which I should have learned in school. They teach it, but I wasn't having any because I wasn't humble. I
Mm.
just was like, I draw my way, and that's what a lot of students, when I was teaching at university, it's like, I could tell the students that we're going to have a good chance of making it, and the ones that weren't. The ones that weren't didn't want to hear anything that I had to say and didn't want to, this is my art and leave me alone. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, you know,
So be teachable, be humble.
yeah, be humble and be teachable. And then probably the third one is be patient, and just
Okay.
know that to become a really good artist takes
Take
a
some time.
chunk of your life, and the idea that you can always continually be getting better. And so what you're doing, like I said, this year is going to, you're going to do better and better. And a lot of people give themselves like deadlines of, if I'm not making it as a professional artist by this date, that's it, I'm quitting. And it's a shame because they liked it enough to try,
But not
so
enough
there
to
was
stick with
something
it.
there. Yeah. And so I try to encourage those people, like, you know just do what you love, because you'll never know, like, you might have an idea someday, and if you're working on your skills, you might have an idea that you could take to Kickstarter, or you may find time later on in your life where you have more time to work on your art. And if you let it go completely, a lot of people, once they let it go, they tell themselves, well, I gave that up, I don't do that anymore.
Mm. So less likely to go back to it.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of time, that's all the time we have today, but I do want to thank you so much for interviewing with us and telling everyone about this wonderful program that you guys have for everyone. And just, I want to recognize that you as an artist are inspiring to many
Well,
others.
thank
I
you.
see it in the comments people make, but to my personal life, you have been very inspiring. And I thank you for that. I thank you for that quite a bit.
Well,
So
thanks.
yeah, so if you want to say goodbye, I'm going to stop recording and
Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. I'm honored to be the first one. And